Rugwabiza.
Mr. President of the Security Council, distinguished members of the Council, Ambassador Ilal, Chair of the Peace Building Commission and Chairperson of the Central African Republic Specific Configuration, Ambassador Zesue, Permanent Representative of the Central African Republic to the United Nations. Mr. President, I would like to congratulate the United Kingdom on assuming the presidency of the Security Council for the month of February. I thank the Council for its continued support for peace and stability in the Central African Republic. Today, I have the honor to present the latest report of the Secretary General on the situation in the Central African Republic and to provide an update on recent political and security developments and progress achieved in the implementation of MINUSCA's mandate. My briefing will focus on the 28th December elections, the mission priorities in the post-election context, progress made in implementing the political agreement for peace and reconciliation in the Central African Republic, including the disarmament and demobilization process, as well as the security situation in the country. Finally, I will share an update on the implementation of the mission's liquidity contingency measures. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, on 28 December 2025, the Central African Republic reached an important milestone in the consolidation of the peace process and state authority by holding combined presidential, legislative, regional, and municipal elections. These elections, which included the first municipal polls, which were held since 1988, represented the most extensive electoral operations ever undertaken in the Central African Republic. The voting process was held in a peaceful and secure manner across most of the country, despite isolated security incidents. This positive outcome is also the result of joint sustained investment over the past years by the Central African government and MINUSCA to extend state authority and advance the implementation on the 2019 political agreement, including at the local level. The mission conducted good offices and provided both technical, logistical, operational, and security support. The good offices of the mission helped foster inclusivity in the electoral process, including positive developments for parity, with women representing more than 47% of the voters and 45% of the candidates in the municipal elections. The support of MINUSCA translated into deployment of 499 Autorités Nationales des Élections Personnelles across the Central African Republic, as well as over 232 tons of electoral materials transported with MINUSCA logistical facilitation across the entire territory of the Central African Republic. MINUSCA also supported the rotation and reinforcement of 1,287 national defense and security forces and the provision of basic support packages to more than 800 soldiers in 9 hotspot areas, all in accordance with the human rights due diligence framework policy. This multifaceted support contributed to maintaining a secure operating environment during the electoral campaign and on election day, including in most hotspot areas. The second round of the legislative, regional, and municipal by-elections will be held on 28 April 2026, and final results will be announced respectively on the 23rd of June 11th of July, and 26th of July, marking the conclusion of the 2025-2026 election cycle. Mr. President, as reflected in the report, the 2019 political agreement continued to advance, including through the dissolution of 2 additional armed groups and the signing of a 3rd agreement for the return of the Mouvement Patriotique pour la Centrafrique to the peace process, with the facilitation of the government of Chad. These developments, along with ongoing MINUSCA support for disarmament and demobilization operations, which since July 2025 have resulted in over 1,200 combatants disarmed and demobilized, contributed to a secure environment for the holding of elections. Following a brief suspension during the electoral period to allow national defense forces to focus on elections security, the disarmament and demobilization operations are expected to resume progressively. Nonetheless, the continuation of a well-planned and coordinated disarmament and demobilization process remains essential to sustain security and peace gains. It also requires adequate, timely, and sustainable socioeconomic reintegration pathways for ex-combatant and host communities, thereby reducing the underlying drivers of armed mobilization. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, while the security conditions improved in the West and Central regions, thanks to the aforementioned achievements, security challenges persist in the Northeast and Southeast regions. In the Southeast, particularly in the Ombumu Prefecture, ongoing attacks by AAKG militia targeting civilians and local authorities remain a concern. In this context, 21 voting centers in the Ombumu Prefecture, out of 6,700 established nationwide, could not open on election day. The insecurity has also exacerbated intercommunal tensions and further constrained humanitarian access. In the Northeast, the conflict in Sudan has driven thousands of refugees into the Vakaga Prefecture, adding pressure on already limited services and heightening local tensions. MINUSCA maintains engagement with local authorities and communities and continues to consolidate its force presence in both the Ombumu and Vakaga prefectures to enhance the protection of civilians. MINUSCA logistical support proved to be instrumental in increasing the geographical coverage of the national defense and internal security forces, as was illustrated during the electoral period. Priority attention is needed, however, and the government-led and coordinated efforts to enhance operational planning, professionalism, governance, and effectiveness of the national security forces, both at strategic, institutional, and operational levels. The mission operating environment was affected by the implementation of our contingency plan in response to liquidity constraints. At the same time, the mission was required to provide multidimensional support for the combined elections and simultaneous disarmament operations in multiple localities while implementing our liquidity contingency plan. In this regard, MINUSCA advanced efficiency measures, enforced strict expenditure controls, and redirected reduced available resources to the protection of civilians, support to the electoral process, and disarmament and demobilization operations. In addition, the mission footprint was readjusted following the reduction of uniform personnel due to the mentioned liquidity constraints to preserve coverage in priority areas. These realignments have had an operational impact, including a reduced geographical coverage of the mission. Distinguished members of the Council, the period following the elections will be decisive for the consolidation of the political peace and security gains and in shaping MINUSCA's legacy for long-term peace and stability in the Central African Republic. As we enter the consolidation phase, MINUSCA remains committed to effectively implementing its mandate with a view to creating necessary conditions for the gradual, orderly, and planned transfer of its mandated task commensurate with the capacities of national institutions to assume them. The effectiveness of this process will require concerted and joint planning with the incoming government once installed, in line with its priorities, as well as a unified support of this Council and availability of timely financial resources which are necessary to implement MINUSCA's mandate. Mr. President, I would like to conclude by expressing my profound gratitude to the civilian and uniformed personnel of MINUSCA, to the UN country team, and to the mission's troops and police contributing countries for their sacrifices, for their dedication to peace and security in the Central African Republic towards building a positive UN legacy for the people of the Central African Republic. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
I thank Ms. Rugwabiza for her briefing. And I now turn